Hey Mark, how's it going up there in chilly Cape Town?
Yeah, it is. Winter is here. Let's just say that. Mornings are cold, afternoons are nice, but yeah, winter's officially arrived in Cape Town. We've had loads of rain. Got a bit of a break at the moment. Looks nice and warm there in Durban, though.
We're enjoying the sun. I think my walks along the beach have been a lot warmer and sunnier than yours.
Yeah, mine have been somewhat limited with the rain of late, but still trying to get out. Ben, today I think we're going to have a chat around, the age-old question: should I buy or should I rent my new home?
Hello, and welcome to Real Financial Planning with Ben and Mark, two lifestyle financial planners who are passionate about helping people understand their money and what it can do for them.
And I'm really excited for this one, Mark, because we're not going to focus on any of the numbers. I think there's so many articles online that you can find, drilling down on all the numbers. And, one little percent here and there can make a massive difference to what those articles will spit out or the results. But what we really want to talk about, I guess, today is kind of almost like the psychology around it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the numbers have been thrashed out so often, and the nuances in terms of buying and renting and interest rates and bond repayments and all of those things, we don't need to do that. The psychology of it, yes, but also the relevance to people's lives. Where you are in your point in your life really dictates as to what you want to do. And I think we want to unpack why people buy or rent, where that inherent feeling comes from, that we need to own land or homes or things like that, and if it's a broad approach that applies to everybody.
Yeah, I think what you brought up there is such a great place to start. Growing up, it's always just kind of been go to school, study hard, get a job, and then buy a house, right? Like it doesn't matter what you do, you got to buy a house. And that's kind of just been ingrained in us over our lives. So do you think that maybe is just something that is ingrained in us? It's just been spoken over us. Is it true? Should we be doing that? What I don't know. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I think it's almost this belief system that's been passed down to us via our parents and maybe from their parents. Like you said, go to school, get good grades so you can study further, hopefully, so you can, start a job. As soon as you start earning money, the first thing is that, yeah, we got to buy a house. And it's, I got sucked into that, I guess. I don't want to say sucked in like it's a bad thing. It was relevant at that time in my life, but I followed that trajectory. Um, and for whatever reason, I guess it was the influence of my parents. It was like, okay, you're making money. You need to now go and buy a house. There was always this thing that you can't go and rent because then you're going to pay somebody else's bond. And that was always perceived to be as the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe a lot of that is as well comes down to thing of just owning your own land. It just makes you feel, or you don't say land. I mean your own property. It gives you that sense of home. Maybe it's a place of belonging. It's yours. It's like I can come home. The world can be falling around down around me, but I can come home to this place, and this is mine.
Yeah, I think that's true. But if you really want to get into it, it's only ever yours once it's paid off, right? If everything's going wrong in the world around you, you lose your job, you go home. If you owe the bank money, they can still come and repossess the house, right? It's going to take a little longer than it'll take for your landlord to kick you out. Um, but it's almost like a false sense of security that it creates. It definitely creates a sense of security. Um, you can't deny that. But do we actually need that sense of security? And maybe why do we want it so much? Is also something to look at.
And I think also, life has changed. As you said, a lot of that came ingrained from our parents. I mean, I know for like my parents, they've stayed in the same house for like the last 30, 40 years. you know, yes, but I haven't even been alive that long, and I've moved around 6 or 7 different times. So if I bought a house each time I lived in a new city, I would have had to buy and sell, and I think that would have just been a massive cost.
Yeah, I think our parents looked at things slightly more practically in that you buy a house, you stay there. This is the plan for the next 40 years. Have 2 kids, we'll send them to the schools around us, and everything will be, hunky dory. We'll sell this house as part of our retirement plan. I just think the world has changed so much from then to now. Firstly, you live where the opportunities are, and where the opportunities are today are not where the opportunities will be in 10 years time. So does it make sense for me to own my house now? Like you said, buying and selling is also an expensive exercise. You buy a house, there's transfer duties, there's lawyers fees. You sell it to buy something else, there's transfer fees, lawyers fees, agents commission. All of these things keep adding up, and those are sunken costs. Those are fees or costs that you'll never get back.
It's not even just a long-term thing. Look at the last a year or two, especially now with COVID. How many people now are realizing that they can work remotely, and people are moving to places where they want to live. They don't have to be in the middle of Joburg anymore, for example. They can move to the coast and have the beach on their doorstep, or to the middle of the bush, as long as they got an internet connection, whatever they fancy, right?
And I think, in making that move, it's easier to just up and go if you're renting. Like you say, working remotely. I've got a friend who works for a US company online, and he works horrible hours, but he works remotely, right? So he can work from his home in Cape Town, he can work from his home in Joburg, he can work from his home in the bush, wherever he wants to position himself. That's where he can work from. But if you're looking at the world through this lens, if we had the mentality that we need to buy our home everywhere we go, okay, so now you want to move from Joburg to the West Coast. You got to sell up in Joburg. You got to see what the market conditions are doing there. You got to then find the right place to buy on the West Coast. Whereas if you're renting, yes, you're signed into your lease term, but realistically, your leases, you can get out of your lease with a month or 2 weeks notice, really. So it gives you more options, I think, renting. Along with the fact that the property belongs to somebody else, so does all the maintenance belong to somebody else.
And I chuckle at that because the other day I came home from work and I heard the neighbor calling me over the wall, and I was like, okay, so hi, and they're like, with all the rain we've had, the side wall or the boundary wall kind of collapsed. The first thought that came to my mind was like, oh man, how much is this gonna cost? And then suddenly thought, oh wait, it's not my problem. And it was the most amazing thing ever. So I had a good thorough inspection of the wall, knowing that I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the perks, provided you've got a good landlord, right? So I think it's a two-way street. Landlords want good tenants, and tenants want good landlords. So if you look after the property, the landlord will do the same. But I think the point you raise is that it's their obligation to fix things. You joke. We had a pipe burst here at our place that we're renting, and the only way we picked it up was my water bill went through the roof, and we don't even have a garden. But eventually we saw that there was a leak, and the owner had to send somebody out, and leak detectors and chopping out tiles and walls, and just sounds like a headache. But it wasn't my headache to deal with. So I think it is beneficial, but there are also some downsides, and I think these are the mental things as well, and maybe some barriers that we put in place. I know it is quite difficult to make your rental house into your home per se. Do you get what I mean by that?
Yes. I mean, especially when I know, like, we didn't want to put photos on the wall because you're gonna damage the wall, and how much are gonna take from the deposit? Oh, I don't want to put up a new curtain because the curtain rails are different, and so all those little things you kind of sacrifice, if you want to call it like that, because you're worried about making it homely.
Yeah, I think it's, you use the word sacrifice, and I think to myself, it's like, why do we make that sacrifice? Maybe it's because we don't incur the cost to leave the house in the conditions we found it. But I think it's a bit deeper than that. It's almost like, well, it's not mine, so I haven't earned the right to call this my house by incurring a massive bond and paying for it. So I don't get the right to put pictures up on the wall and to buy curtains that are a specific length that will only fit this room, and all of those things are almost, I think, in our mind we tell ourselves that those privileges are saved for the day that you own your own house. And again, like, where does that come from?
Yeah, no, exactly. And see, obviously you don't listen to that because I see there's some paintings hanging on the wall behind you, so you're like, whatever. I'll make some.
To be honest, those paintings came with the house, right? The place we were renting, it's semi-furnished, which is nice in a way, because we were able to bring in some furniture that we like, but we also get to benefit from some of the stuff that the owners already put in. But out of interest, I'm assuming you rent, right?
Yeah. My wife and I both got new jobs, and so then we moved down into Durban, and we didn't know the area, we didn't know what was going on, so we thought, well, obviously the best thing to do would be to rent, and so that was kind of like our initial reason. And then that was,
how long ago was that?
That was like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so we're still in the same place, and I think there's several factors. We're just also looking at long term, where we do want to be, job opportunities, like you said, training. So what if we wanted to leave tomorrow? No, we could, and uproot. And like you said, one of those things that we had struggled with the most is kind of that thing of my wife's wanting to put up these nice things and pictures and all this kind of stuff, and I always just sort of been a bit like, it's not ours, we're not allowed to, this and that. So we kind of sat down and thought about it, and we're saying, well, no, what's the worst thing? What if we forfeited our whole deposit? Hypothetically, would that be okay? No, we could. So why do you not make it into a home? If we're going to stay here for the next maybe 3 to 4 years, let's make it homely. Let's make it the way that we want to live. And because we knew as well, if we were to buy the place we wanted to buy, would be probably a lot more expensive than what we're paying at the moment. So we're getting a great deal for where we're staying, right?
Yeah, I think it's those little tricks that one can use. Like, we're not going to get to the end of this conversation saying buying is better than renting or renting is better than buying. It's what's relevant to you and your life and your plan and what you want to do. But if you're going to choose to rent, it maybe is that, so in your mind you say, okay, look, my deposit is X. I'm going to forfeit my deposit because I'm going to make this house the way I want it, the way my wife and my kids want it. And yes, I know that when I give the house back, I have to give it in the condition that we found it. So do that, right? The alternative is to say, fine, no, I'm going to buy, because if I buy, I can, I can go into the garden, I can plant trees, and I can do this, and I can do that. I can do whatever I want, and maybe that's fulfilling for you. For me, just saying those words, like, I want to run away. I don't want to plant trees. I don't want to dig in a garden. I think that my view is slightly skewed because when we stayed in Joburg, we owned our first house and we sold that, and we bought another house. And it's always in this thing, you start with one and you have to get bigger and you have to get bigger. But with the bigger house comes bigger costs and bigger maintenance. So it's never just the the bond repayments and the rates and taxes and those things. It's everything else that goes with it. And for us, we were just at a time in our life where I didn't want that anymore. And renting gives me the ability to, we moved from Joburg to Cape Town, gives me the ability to live in Cape Town, in Greenpoint, in a house that I don't own, that's at the coast, that costs a lot to maintain, but it's positioned nicely, and I've got a great view, and it gives everything that my family and I want right now. So for us right now, renting makes sense.
Yeah. And so, Mark, we've spoken a lot about the benefits, I guess, around renting and some other things, but I guess there are some benefits of owning a house as well. We don't want to just say renting is the only option. And so, do you think, what are your thoughts around owning a house? From my side, I think, if you're going to live in the area and you find a great house that you can stay in for maybe 20, 15, 20 years, probably a great.
Yeah, it's not a bad option. I think there's two things, I went for a run this morning, and I've got one or two routes, and I went to one, and I run past these homes, and they're very nice. There is something aspirational about wanting to own your primary residence, and I don't know what it is. It's just a feeling, right? It's like, well, maybe I've arrived. This is mine. I own this, and maybe there is something which is outward looking, so it's others see that I have done well in life because I own this house, and or maybe it's not, and it's just it's the feeling that it gives me about owning my home. But I think it comes from it's not, we haven't informed that decision. That's sort of been instilled in us, in how our family has been. Maybe it's the other side of the spectrum could be that we never owned a home as a family, and we always moved around a lot. And so home ownership for me really is just security, and not in the sense that nobody can take it from me. It's security in that I moved around all over the show, and now I've got something to make a base of my own, and I can have my kids there and grandkids and whatever it is, and potentially that sort of provides for you.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. And I think that's a big thing, is knowing the underlying reason of what that property, what does that mean for you. So yeah, I think maybe as we wrap up, let's just maybe just go through, summarize some of the highlights. So maybe if you rent, that's awesome because you can pack up and leave whenever you want. Maintenance costs are not for you. The landlord, provided you have a good landlord that gets things sorted out.
It's a two-way street. So you got to be a good tenant to deserve a good landlord.
Yeah.
I think some of the other perks of renting, it gives you, like you said, freedom to move around whenever you want. It also gives you ability to live a different lifestyle, I think, and a lifestyle that's relevant to you at that stage in your life.
Yeah.
And maybe buying gives you a sense of security, a sense of ownership, almost a bit of accomplishment, aspiration in life. Anything else on buying?
Yeah, well, the nice thing about buying is after 20 years, when you finally pay the last part off to the bank, then you can live rent free. You still got to pay, your water, lights, rent, all that stuff. So, that could be a nice relief.
You do make a good point there, because paying off your bond every month is kind of like a fixed savings, provided all things being equal and the world doesn't go down completely. All that money that you've been paying every month, there will be some value in it at the end of the day. It's very hard to realize that value though, because if you sell it, yes, you'll realize it, but you need to go live somewhere still. So you're going to incur either a lump sum expense or a monthly expenditure. But it is it's a fixed savings of sorts, which is still positive.
So what would be your one takeaway from for someone listening to this today, Mark?
There's no one size fits all solution. Buying served a purpose for 6-7 years of my life. Renting serves a purpose for my life at the moment. I think my biggest takeaway is do what's good for you and your family at that stage in your life.
Perfect. And I'll just wrap up by saying, if you are renting, there's no reason why it can't be your home. Don't you gotta really believe that, and just don't say just because you're renting doesn't mean it can't be your home. And just think about it, meditate on it, and there's always a way forward.
So, cheers, Ben.
Cheers, Mark. Have a great one.